Let's do this. All right, I am clicking live, clicking go live on all of our streams here. Click, 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 go live. All right. Hey, everybody. Welcome to Fran and Friends podcast. On Sundays, we usually have our parenting series at 7 o'clock, but due to some technical difficulties, we had to start 30 minutes late. And hopefully, you can still join us for a chat. As you know, on Sundays, we have a parenting series called The Game of Parenting and How to Play It. And my co host, Dima, she will be assisting us talking about our mindset today as parents. All right, darling, I'm ready when you are.
Yes. So let's give them an idea, especially for the people that joined us recently, about how this idea developed and where we are now in the podcast. So at the beginning, when we first talked about this, it was your idea to have a joint podcast. And we were brainstorming and wanted to do something really interesting for parents based on both our experiences in parenting our children. And it was really, I would say, in some ways, it was really challenging, either in our relationship with our kids or in our relationship with ourselves. And that's how we brainstormed and said, you know what? Let's call the podcast the game of parenting and how to play it. At the very start, in the first episode, we were talking about the parenting relationship of punishment or positive reinforcement. And this is
Yeah.
where we came to the conclusion that our kids don't listen to us. And that's why some people resort to punishment. So why don't kids
Mhm.
listen to us? If you want to listen to all of this, you can go back to the episodes and listen to every episode alone. So the first episode was around positive reinforcement or punishment. Then we moved
Mhm.
into, okay, for us to have our children listen to us, we need to build a healthy relationship. But that
Yeah.
healthy relationship cannot be a healthy relationship without starting within ourselves. So if we criticize ourselves, if we're not happy with the way we are, we will always have grudges and it will affect the relationship we have with our children. Then
Yep.
we moved into the idea that, okay, let's say people who are listening to us really have a problem in that matter, like they cannot feel at peace with themselves. We talked about the different ways we can change our behavior, and we talked about the origin of our behaviors as well. The next thing we did as well was, is there anything we needed to know more about change and how to achieve it? And this is where we're
Mhm.
coming today to talk about, okay, we want to change. We know now from I think it was the fourth episode when we talked about the different ways to change. And now, what are the prerequisites of that change in life?
I'm glad you had that list down, Dima, because I have no clue which one came first.
No, because we
I
had
was like,
for,
"Mhm,
for
this."
personal reasons, we had to stop for 2 weeks. I thought, you know what? I would better put the link between our different episodes. So today,
Well, I'm glad you did. Thank you.
yeah, so today I'm gonna shed the light with you, of course, on my smile method, which I believe I realized it was a prerequisite as I wrote in my where's my the mirror in the camera. So in my book Intentional Reset, I actually talked about prerequisites for transformation. And here, let's give them a quick idea about your story so they understand where we're coming from before we start this episode.
Oh,
Your
sure.
story, your book.
So yeah, I don't know if you guys can see my book here. Can you see it? Okay. Yeah, whatever. My book is called Can You Hear Me? For all intents and purposes. it was because I did not know how to listen as a parent. So I found myself in contrast with my 14-year-old at the time, and we were not seeing eye to eye. One day I asked her to take out the trash, and she immediately mouthed off at me and said, "Why don't you take out the trash? You're not doing anything." And as a parent, and the way that I was parented, the immediate response was corporal punishment. Like, you need your mouth like washed with soap and your behind whooped with the belt. So at that time, I was doing my own self development. And I knew that the applications and the techniques that I was using as a parent weren't working, because a lot of the areas in my life started to go haywire all at the same time. So, in this application, I had found this book by, I believe it's Dr. Marshall Rosenberg, and the book is called Nonviolent Communication. And so it taught me how to play a game on how I could learn how to listen and create boundaries and become a safer space for my child, and vice versa. And I'm telling you, the application of that was so difficult because I didn't know what boundaries were. And I did not know how to allow them to have their expression without inserting myself in that space. But as I continued to practice, and I failed many times, by the way, it opened up a door for me to have a healthier dialogue with her, and then also have a healthier dialogue with myself. So that's how I ended up writing my book. And I believe that's some of the basis of how me and Dima came upon this collaboration.
Yeah, yeah. It's really interesting because I'm sure a lot of people that will be listening to this podcast even later are gonna relate to, because even now on my daily basis when dealing with people, the first thing people mention is disrespect and social media era, and how most of the parents I talk to resolve to punishment in
Mhm.
order to fix their kids' behavior.
Right.
Yeah, and they get offended by it. And
Mhm.
today it's more about talking, why do we get offended, and is there something we should know about that will get us to feel more in peace with ourselves? For me, from my side of the story, I wrote Intentional Reset, to be honest, after I hit rock bottom. So at some point in my career of architecture, I was trying to be the perfect mom, the perfect partner, the perfect everything. And I got
Right.
drained because I couldn't see, because you know what? We are perfect in every single way compared to us today. So perfectionism doesn't, that's what I learned. I wanted to be perfect, but I didn't know at that time what are the standards of perfectionism I was using. But after
Mm.
my experience in the past 10 years, I would say perfectionism does not exist. And every single day is like, I am perfect for today, for that amount of time, because when I wake up next morning, my standards have changed, the society has changed, time has passed, so the standards change. So I really hit rock bottom trying to, I think I wanted the validation from everyone around me,
I
and
get that.
because I couldn't see it, I got burnt out.
Mm.
So, and this is where, when I got burnt out, I think I asked for help, and no one was willing to help me, because yeah, I understand that therapy is a business. And in the history of psychology, they say the psychology as a job started at some point when there was a lot of funding from governments, and it became like a job to help people.
Mm.
But now, and I know this information now because I'm studying psychology. I
Right. Right.
entered uni again to study psychology. But at that time, it was really unfair in my head that if you don't have money and you don't have time, you won't have the chance to be helped. And I started on Instagram, and I started just posting quotes, writing whatever I'm feeling. And I didn't say that was what I'm feeling. I'm a writer there. People started relating to what I wrote, and they asked me for help. So imagine you're there, your tears are falling, you don't know what's happening in your life, and then someone wants your help because they heard your words. And when I started helping, I realized that after half an hour of chat, people would send me emojis of faces that are like happy or crying and saying, you know what, I got it. And after 6 months, I get a message from people telling me, you saved my life. I was about to take my life. So it was a bit of, okay, we need to do something in this world. And that's why when we started this podcast, if you remember, we always mentioned, we're not here to sell you anything. We're here to support those people that feel overwhelmed, stuck, lost. They don't know what to do. We're here to provide solutions that are, like, now I can say a lot of them are evidence-based. A lot of them are experienced by us and the people we help. But
Mm-hmm.
again, at that time, COVID hit. I wanted to put everything in a book because I said, what if I get sick and I die? So that's how I wrote Intentional Reset, which was a compilation of all the strategies I used while talking to people that I didn't really know the real name of these strategies. And now, as I'm going through psychology, I'm learning technical terms of these, of whatever I've done.
Good for you.
So yeah, so today is combining friends' experience and my experience to just help parents who are overwhelmed, who don't really have the time, not even the money, to go to therapy. And what we're trying to tell you, it's like parenting is a journey. It's so much fun when you learn how to live with yourself at peace, because if you're not at peace, you're always fighting with yourself and with the people around.
Oh, I agree. I'm so glad that you wrote that book, Dima, because I know we're not selling it right now, but I just really love the fact that you wrote it as a therapist, to some, even though you're not a therapist, but you wrote it for somebody looking um, to identify what their own problem was. And I think, $30 versus how much they charge, an hour now. I don't know how
Yeah,
much, maybe 125 to 150 an hour. That's here in the States,
yeah,
and even more. Um, I think, like you said earlier, having to pay that much, people probably are still having those conversations that they can't afford that time and they can't afford that money to do that. So I'm glad that this is a resource for them, that they can find it, and it's only $30.
yeah. But again, you know me very well by now. So of course, we all need to work to sustain a certain living. But at the
Yeah.
same time, if someone even finds it hard to pay $30 for a book, I am
Hmm.
more than happy to, if they can email me, send me their emails on my social media. I would be more than happy to share it. So that's on a side note.
That's awesome.
So let's start with today.
Okay.
So in my book, actually, it's like, so, like, I always go back to the book because it was a really how the organic idea of tackling that subject. Yeah.
Yep.
So in the book, I wrote a section called the prerequisites for the transformation of life. Yeah.
Okay.
And later on, after I wrote the book, I named something called the SMILE framework.
Okay.
Okay. That sums this up. And you can interrupt me because I'm giving all the information. You interrupt me whenever you want. Yeah. So in the prerequisites of life, which is under the SMILE method, I realized that we all want to be happy. Yeah.
Yes.
And if we look at the problem we're facing with our kids in particular, I think it's a problem of emotional intelligence. Because emotional intelligence basically is our ability to stop between stimuli, like something comes, triggers me, I need to
Mm-hmm.
respond. If I really want to be emotionally intelligent, emotionally intelligent people stop we're talking about fractions of seconds, yeah? And have this protection against the words that are coming. So we have a filter that we don't hear anymore what we listen to from a perception, we hear words. We filter that and then we choose our response rather than being chosen by.
Okay.
And for me, success in relationships, whether at home or at work or in relationships like partnerships or with kids, start by being emotionally intelligent. So this is where I stopped and I said, okay, how can people be emotionally intelligent? So I looked like one step. I'm taking the SMILE methods from down up, yeah, from the E to the S.
Okay.
I looked before. I said, okay, to be so emotional intelligence normally is a relation. It shows when we have relationship with others. So we need to be good leaders before we can be emotionally intelligent. We need to know how to talk to people. We know how to understand people, how to nurture people. And this is where leadership comes. Leadership is about understanding and dealing with others in a really peaceful and calm way.
Okay.
Okay? So because you hear, the thing is, we hear a lot about emotional intelligence in trainings. We hear a lot about leadership in training, but we don't hear that in order for you to lead others, I have 3 prerequisites, and that's the SMILE method. The first one is self-mastery, is your ability to deal with yourself. And we'll talk about this in a minute. The second one is the ability to deal with time, which is mindfulness. The third one is the ability to deal with circumstances, which is inner peace.
Okay.
So if you are someone who can't lead herself or himself, you are offended by circumstances and what life brings on your table. You are always worrying about when life will end and I haven't had enough and I don't want to get sick. And you're always focused on these things. Can you imagine if you are in this state, can you think that you will be a good leader? Would you
Because you're
be a
too
good
busy
parent?
focusing on, no, you're going to be too busy focusing on the problems, and you won't be solution oriented because your
Exactly.
mindset is already focused on the negative.
Yeah, and you won't be also a source of security for kids. And when I
Oh,
say source of security for kids, so think about it this way. Most of us, when we were growing up, we had the house, maybe, we had the food, we had the education, but we really didn't have the emotional connections with our parents because we were in the, I think it's industrial or capitalism, where parents were always working, worried about the future. They want to really get us to live a decent life. So we never had that interaction of emotions. So many of us today lack that emotional support. And I think I always think of it as each one of us has a tank, emotional tank. And we have the basic needs, of course. But for me, from my experience and what I'm seeing in schools, what I'm seeing in families, I see that most of us had the basic needs of care, of food, of shelter were there, but then we never made it into the emotional tank that was most of the time empty because no one ever saw that, oh, a hug is as important as the bread we eat.
yeah, no, it wasn't.
Yeah.
Yeah, it wasn't.
So,
Well, in my household, and then also too for me, because I grew up a little different. Food was a problem for us. Like
yeah.
we used to get food stamps like on the 1st and the 15th, and in between time, there would be days when there was no food. So
Yeah. So
yeah.
imagine not having the basic needs and not having the emotional needs because we don't have the basic needs. It actually, we grow up like not feeling that we're good enough.
Yeah.
And sometimes we have this feeling inside where we want a revenge, or we want to save our kids from the misery we've lived. So we work hard in order to have enough money to give them what they need, but we again forget to sit with them and fill their emotional tanks by giving them attention, by talking to them and listening, really listening to them, actively listening to them, rather than holding holding our phones nowadays. We have the phones, and it's like, oh no, sorry, I still need to send one email. We finish the email and ping, another message comes. This nowadays is the biggest problem that
It is.
is also contributing to us losing those healthy relationships with our kids.
Mm. Totally. Totally.
So I don't know if
Totally.
this makes sense. Like self-mastery, we go to mindfulness. Oh my God, I have this in front of me. Look at this. Ah, does it so?
Okay, I
So
see it.
five steps for winning the game of life. Okay?
So, yeah,
Self-mastery.
mindfulness,
Yeah.
inner peace. Okay. Leadership and emotional intelligence.
And that's the SMILE framework. So I designed this with magnets so people can have it in front of them and not forget
I was
that
going to say
if they,
a version of it.
yeah, I'll send you a digital
Cool.
version of it, and whoever
Okay.
wants it, we can send it to them, because it's really a formula of just checking in with yourself and looking, am I dealing with something today? If I am dealing with something today, then I must have skipped one of the steps.
Mm.
Then you start going backward. And normally you don't see the problem except in leadership. What I mean by leadership, each one of us, if you think about it, each one of us is in a leadership position somewhere. We influence people on the street, in the bus, at work, at home. So we are all leaders. And the
Mm-hmm.
problems we face normally are with our communication. And the minute you face a problem in your communication, instead of looking and pointing fingers at the person in front of you, whether they are your kids or your partner or your colleagues, I suggest that we stop, use our emotional intelligence to look what is happening. Why did I get offended? Why I couldn't have a decent conversation without raising my voice or without saying rude words, or like there are many ways where we lose connection with others. So here is the emphasis of how can I really lead myself before I lead others.
Can you hear me?
Yeah,
Okay, I thought we were stuck.
no.
No,
It's not.
I'm, yeah, how can we definitely? I mean, leading. I was thinking about the self mastery step when you were talking, and I'm like, the significance and importance of self mastery, and then also too, when we do communicate with others, other people are the triggers for things that we need to work on. And so
Yes.
having this conversation is important as to identify, why do I feel a certain way when I'm talking to this person? Is it because I need to pay attention to something that I see in them that I have in me?
Yes, and when I tell my kids, so normally when my kids come complaining about someone at in class or at school, I stop and say, okay, do you know that the problem might be you? And they're like, no, what? Why are you always saying this? I'm like, no. It's not like the problem is in you. It's just the way we are seeing things really change the way we feel.
Yeah.
So sometimes the person says something very simple. It's our interpretation to what they have said that makes the whole situation go out of proportion.
Oh, totally. And then our kids are the most closest things to us, and they will be the most reflective version of ourselves because they
Yes.
know us so well.
Yes. And in order, if we start seeing that our kids are having trouble in one certain area of their lives, we need to go back and see what can we change, especially the young people. Like before 18, they still look up to us. They will always look up to us. But I mean, they look up to us and see if we change a certain behavior, trust me, they will see the value of it and they will change it within themselves.
Hmm.
And that's why self mastery is really the first step into changing anything in your life. Because when we talk about self mastery, I'm going to read what I wrote
Okay.
in this thing, and then I'll
I was
explain
gonna
more.
ask you to do
So,
that earlier too.
what?
I said I was gonna ask you to do that earlier too, but
Yeah, yeah.
you already read my vibes.
So in this one, I say dive deep into the epic quest of mastering your emotions, behaviors, habits, and skills. Get ready for a roller coaster of self discipline, self control, self confidence, self love, and self awareness to unlock your full potential and conquer the path to personal growth and success.
Whew, that's, I know all I heard was self, 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 self.
Yes, yes,
I I know we've said it a lot of times, but I think it's something worth continuing to repeat. Is
yeah,
that if we change ourselves, then we can have the influence to change our children. And it's not that we want to change just because of the sake of changing. It's because when we do make that shift within ourselves, it becomes apparent. It becomes evident in the way that we live, the way that we talk, and kids do not go off of just a mere conversation. They are
right.
observers by nature, and that is what they will cling to as a model. What you say,
Yes.
what you do, and not what you say.
And you know what? I'm gonna put in some like something I didn't like I wasn't planning to talk about. But even the way you look, nowadays we see a surge in people putting Botox, filling their lips, filling their faces just to look fresh and young. Yeah. In psychology, if I don't, I don't, I don't.
No, no, I was looking at myself. I was like, "All right, you look good."
No, you will be surprised how many especially people that go like influencers, they really think that when I have things in my face and I improve the way I look, my energy will change. When you
Mm.
work on yourself and you become in peace with yourself, your skin will rejuvenate. You will shine. Really, you will shine, and you know what? How many times people would come to someone and say, "Oh, you don't look your age." It's not because they've done something to their face. It's because they feel better about who they are and they are
Mhm.
fully self-confident, which makes them really attractive to the people around them.
Girlfriend, because I am 45, and I always get the, "Oh my God, you look younger than your age," and
Yes,
you're right. Even
and
though it may be
I believe in
genes.
that.
Yeah, even though I have great genes, like you're right. Even if they do look a certain age, there is an attraction to people who love themselves.
Yes, and people who really grow old fast, many of them are the ones that overthink stuff. They cannot forgive. They hold grudges. And here, I'll give a story I had from one of the books. I think it's called Psycho-Cybernetics. For I'm not good with names, but if you look at Psycho-Cybernetics, it's a
Mhm.
book by a very nice writer who was actually a surgeon. He used to do plastic surgery.
Hmm.
Okay. And at the beginning of his career, he used to look at people, they would change the way they look and then come back to him telling him that they haven't changed. And this is where he realized that when we look at ourselves in the mirror, we don't actually see what's in the mirror. We see through the eyes of our self-image.
Mm.
So if our self-image is broken because of, let's say, continuous criticism, if we haven't been given compliments, if we've always been um, criticized for our body or our look or the way we talk, then we develop an image that we see in the mirror that it's not the actual image. And this is where what he did, he started telling people that he cannot operate and do any surgery before they go on a program with him, so they can love themselves.
This is a
And
twisty
actually,
program.
yeah, and
And-
this psychological program made a big difference. Some people didn't go through surgery
Wow.
because they love themselves. And the other ones that really had protruding things, like let's say they didn't like their nose or they felt they needed an upgrade for that, did it and enjoyed the result just because they were self-aware of why
Mm.
they wanted to do that change.
I love that. I am reading a book right now called Mirror Work
Yeah,
by Louise Hayes. Oh my gosh. Dima, day one, I tell you, she said, like, look at yourself and tell yourself, like, you put your name and say, I love you. I really, really love you. Or if you can't say that, put your name and say, I'm learning how to love you. I really, really am learning how to love you. But she said the first day when you sit and take a look, like, stop and look at your face in the mirror and look at your eyes, like, intently give a few moments to look at your eyes. And when I looked at my eyes, Dima, I was like, oh my God, girl, you have some beautiful eyes. Where have you been all this time?
yes,
And
yes,
I didn't even I've never looked at myself in that way. Like, I've always seen my face, but I never took time to look within my eyes and
yeah,
give myself that moment just to reflect. But also too, I looked a little bit deeper and I was like, dang, I saw myself holding on to a lot of things that I hadn't acknowledged within looking at myself. But then I also saw that I had been creating compassion for myself too. So
yes,
for people that do want to do some mirror work, or like we're talking
yeah,
about self-efficacy, learning how to talk to ourselves positively, I think Mirror Work by Louise Hayes would be a good resource.
yeah. Louise Hayes, I love Louise Hayes. Um, yeah, like being compassionate with yourself and understanding that our past is not actually a burden.
Hmm.
Like, especially here in Australia, I see a lot of times people trying to fight the past and just talking in such, how can I say, it's painful. I'm not saying it's not painful, but when you have that anger inside, when you have that hate inside, that's all what you're planting day in, day out.
Mm, mm,
So when you are doing this to yourself, when you look at yourself and you criticize yourself all the time, most probably without noticing, you are criticizing your kids. You're telling your kids that they are lying, you don't trust them, they they're eating and their body is changing in a not good way.
mm,
You're making those remarks that seem to be, for many parents, it's the right way to put our kids on the right track because we want them to be healthy. We don't want
mhm,
them to go through the same troubles we went through. But we don't understand that our kids have a different set of languages. So the
mm,
language our kids use is different than our language. So if I tell my daughter, let's say, if I take the phone from my daughter because I want her to focus on her studies, and tell her you're not allowed to take that phone except when you finish your duty, I'm not teaching her anything except I don't trust you. I need to control you in order for you to do the things that matter for you. Instead of sitting with her and telling her, Mom, do you like this subject at school? Are you doing your homework on time? Even if I knew from her teacher that she didn't do her homework, I would come and have a conversation to understand from her point of view why she's running away from that homework. And then I would
Mm.
start encouraging her to see, okay, what do you want to become? What do you think you're gonna do when you grow older, when you go to uni? Do you think that specific subject will help you? Do you think your grades at school will help you? So, like in this conversation, the child will come to you and will tell you exactly what they need to do while they are aware. So
Yeah.
awareness in all of that, even the mirror work, it's mostly around raising our awareness to see what autopilot we're on. We are on autopilot.
Yeah. Going back to like the inner critic, when you mentioned how some parents, they'll notice that their kids might be overeating and talk about their body and start to shame them in that way. One thing to identify is like when we are saying these type of critical things is to think about the inner, not just the inner critic, but also to how we're talking to ourselves. Like the way that
Yeah,
we criticize other people is really the way that we think about ourselves, when we do have these internal conversations.
yeah,
So
yeah. These
awareness,
are our
yeah.
standards. So if we want to put it in a really simple way, these are our standards, and we measure other people's standards based on our standards.
Mm-hmm.
So the minute we start giving people criticism, a lot of times we don't notice. It's the autopilot. It's like, it's normal. But because we're talking about this now, a lot of people will start realizing that a lot of times we are we want to help our kids, but we're damaging them forever.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of times, if we want to talk about the subject of overeating and just using food as emotional a pacifier,
Right.
we have to look at, I don't eat just because I feel like eating. There is a feeling inside. Let's say some people eat when they are unhappy at work, when they are stressed. The first thing they resort to is the food.
Yeah.
And going back to the development stages, we see that a lot of parents, when they want to give a reward for a child, they give them a candy. If they're upset, they give them food and they give them the sugary food.
Mm-hmm.
So it's such a vicious circle. Like,
Wow.
that's why to change the whole habits, it's not impossible, but it's really hard. So if you're listening to us and thinking, oh my God, I have a lot of work to do. Yes, we have a lot of work to do, but we go back to the story of driving a car. When we first wanted to drive a car, it was impossible. So many things to think of at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
But if we do things step by step, we learn the road rules, we know the car type, if it's automatic or manual, we learn how to operate, then we have an instructor, that instructor will teach us how to operate. We don't take the car one day suddenly alone, we take it with someone who's with us. We practice, practice, practice until our reactions become automatic and driving becomes a nature.
So we're just learning a new tool.
We're learning a new tool to drive our life in the best way possible.
Mm. So for those that may be struggling with overeating, or you mentioned the parenting providing a reward when they were younger, giving them candy.
Yeah,
So what would be a technique that they could apply? I know that you mentioned awareness, but I
yeah,
think, with the emotional intelligence and some people not really having exercised that yet, is there
yeah.
something that we could apply?
Yes, actually, there is a method. I think they call it swish method.
Swish.
So, yes,
My
and
leg just keeps going on and off.
it's uh, It's actually a classical conditioning. Anyway, we won't go into the psychology jargon, but
Okay.
the Swish method, I'll take it in a very fun way. So you
Okay.
know how we are online now, and we have the screen in front of us, and people are looking at us. So if you
Hmm.
are in a meeting, sometimes you see, if it's two people meeting, you see one face that is big, and another one, maybe you are
Yeah.
in
Yeah.
the small window. Okay.
Hmm.
So I compared this to how to change your. That's it. Yeah. Yeah. Perfect. Thank you. So
You're welcome.
let's say let's say this is me now. I want, because now I can see you, your face big and my face small. Okay.
Okay.
When we are in a situation where, let's say, we are angry and we go to food. Okay.
Hmm.
Every time we're angry, we go to food. So let's say the big picture we're seeing is us in that angry mood that
Mm.
we really don't like, because this is our autopilot. This is the most common thing we see ourselves doing. Okay.
Okay.
Now, the small window, imagine a time in your life, or something like a time in your life when you were really happy, or imagine a dream that you would like to achieve that will make you really the happiest person in the world.
Okay.
Okay.
I got it.
So whoever is listening, you can close your eyes and think of that moment where you really, really felt so happy in your life. Okay. And you put it in this small window.
Okay.
Okay. Now let's say it happened. I am now very angry and I want to eat. So before I go eat, I tell the people, think of that image that was very small and push it. So can you do it for us now, or I can do it? No, I cannot do it. So if we push,
Or this one.
okay, 1 second, let me try this. Okay, okay, let's do the half if you want, or you alone, or me alone. How does it happen? Anyway, so once you hit that, like in Zoom, if you hit your photo, it comes all the way and becomes the bigger picture.
Oh,
Okay, so
like this.
instead of you being the small, like we said, we had a big picture that is the
Hmm.
normal one, and we have the small one, which is the dream. When you are upset, try to put the dream in the center of your screen. If you do
Oh.
that, yes, if
So it
you do
becomes
that,
like, so it's almost like a stumbling block
wait,
for the bigger picture to like, hey, it's a caution sign.
yes, and then you replace it. So you put your ideal picture at the center of your eyes.
Hmm.
So you change the mood from being angry and unhappy to becoming happy, and your dopamine level will go up. Let's talk here about the perception of the mind. So we have our mind and we have two perceptions. Yeah. We have either a perception of love, or a perception of hate, anger, guilt, uh, like all the negative emotions. Yeah.
Okay.
When you have that screen in front of you and you catch yourself in a moment where you're angry, why is it better to put your dreams or that happy moment in your life in the middle? Because immediately you will get your mind to go back to the love perception. And when the mind
Mm.
has a love perception, it gets your body to have a positive reaction. So you feel the dopamine in you will empower your immune system, your cells will keep on generating, and you have a normal growth state.
Okay, so it's a physiological response that we're looking for.
Exactly. So we
Wow.
change our physiological response, because
And I felt
if
that
we
too.
stick, yeah, and if
Yeah, I
we
felt
stick
that
to,
too when you said to grab the little picture and put it in front of me, and I'm like, oh, I don't want to run over my small picture.
yes, yes, and it gets you, because if you're stuck in the autopilot that you're always angry, first of all, you're going to eat, but it's not a problem if you put on weight or not. The problem is this act of being angry and putting the food in your mouth without thinking, first of all, your immune system is going very, very low. Sometimes it shuts down because you're not feeling well. It needs to find solutions. When I need to find solution, I need a lot of energy. So my immune system stops, my cells don't generate. I just feel I am drained out of energy. Okay. And the food I'm eating, if it's bad food, it's going to affect my cholesterol level, my heart problems. So, and this is why you see a lot of people, even if they're thin or they're big, it doesn't matter. The people who are angry all the time are the people who develop more illnesses.
Wow.
Okay. So
I didn't know
this
that.
switch method of removing from, so let's say practically I'm in the house, I don't feel well. I felt a trigger from someone who talked to me in a bad way, or my kid's not listening to me, and I feel undermined. Okay. What I need to do is close my eyes, bring back that photo we talked about. So we need to have a photo that is
Positive
the
image.
same. The positive image needs to be the same all the time. So I close my eyes, bring back that image in my head, and submerge my body with all the positive emotions so that my hormones will change and work with me instead of against me. And when
Okay,
I do this on a
so we
long
need to
period of
make sure
time,
that
yeah,
the emotions and the feelings are something that we can actually physiologically feel, so that
yes,
that shift can occur from negative to positive.
yes. And with time, guess what happens? If you do it enough, immediately the trigger will trigger the good response, not the bad response.
Nice, but practice.
Right. And I'll give the basis of this method is goes back to Pavlov dog experiment. I don't know if you've heard about Pavlov dog experiment. So we'll
Yes.
we'll we'll mention it quickly. So Pavlov wanted to understand the conditioning of humans, and normally they used to use dogs to understand that. So when he got the dog, if the dog doesn't see any food, he doesn't salivate. Then he introduced the food. So every time the dog came to eat, he would salivate because he's seeing the food. Then he decided he wanted to change something about the behavior of the dog. So every time the dog came to eat, he rang a bell. Okay. So every time the dog is eating, they rang the bell. They rang the bell, and every time they heard the bell while watching the food, the dog will salivate. Okay. At one point, they didn't put the food and they rang the bell. What happened? The dog
The dog
salivated.
was salivating. Yeah.
So that's the change. Another story I learned yesterday also, it makes it more even clearer. So they got a baby. That's a very old experiment, and nowadays it's called unethical experiment. I think it's called Little Albert. They did the same to condition Little Albert to show how we can condition people who don't have any problems. We can condition them. So the first they got this 9 month baby and put all different fur toys next to him, yeah, and they got a hamster. They got a lot of things. The baby doesn't know anything and looks at all these in the same way. Then they got the baby to stay with the hamster alone, yeah. When he first saw the hamster, it was fine, no reaction. It's like a moving object. But then the next time they introduced the hamster, they banged a metal piece in such a loud way that it frightened the baby. And every time they introduced the hamster, they introduced the noise. At one point, they stopped the noise and got the hamster. The baby started crying. And the worst happened, that the baby started crying whenever he saw any object that looked like the hamster.
So they created a trigger.
Yes. And in the same
Interesting.
way the trigger is created, we can change it by coupling that trigger with something nice. Every time the trigger comes, I put something nice. Every time the trigger comes, I put something nice. Then when the trigger is alone, I remember the nice.
Okay.
If that makes
Cool.
sense.
I will keep. Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. It does. I like I liked how you did the little Zoom thing, how because that really helped with the visual. Um
Yes.
Definitely remembering my custom container home.
Yeah.
That's what I had to do.
Yeah. Like I like racing cars. I like the track where you have the small what do they call them? Like karting
The
karting
go-kart?
cars. Go-karts. I
Yes.
love it. And that's something that I discovered when I'm older. And one of the things is like thinking about me driving it and like going quickly.
I like that too. I like that too.
Yeah.
Well,
So
we only we only have 4 minutes left because we took an
okay.
hour.
Let
I know we started late, so
no, it's fine. Look, what we I'm trying to organize our next session because we had earlier thought of something. But since we talked today more about the self and we talked about how we like a practical way how to really change the negative thoughts, I think next time we move into the mindfulness and the inner peace in the smile method so we can talk more about them and continue on the self because with the self we're going to talk about um, why we shouldn't compare ourselves to other people
mm,
and how self-compassion can lead us to forgiveness and lead us to live in peace with the people who hurt us because at the end of the day we will not get hurt except if we lack self-love.
yeah. And then also too, like holding on to that, like you said, we are hurting ourselves. We are holding on to an energy
Yeah,
and an emotion that we do not need to hold on to.
yeah, and there's a quote that says if you don't stop uh, oh my god, it's about bleeding,
Hmm.
that if you don't heal from a hurt that is in the past, you will keep on bleeding on people that didn't hurt you.
Oh yeah, 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 yeah. There's one
It's
that's
such
very similar to that. Hurt people hurt other people.
yeah, it's just powerful that every time we don't resolve our own problems, we don't accept ourselves, we will end up having that on our kids, on our relationships. We won't even be able to have proper relationships with like a romantic relationship will be not existent if we can't love ourselves.
Yeah. I just saw this visual demo like, all right, imagine us talking and like there's a whole bunch of people and as we speak, I know it's not spitting on people, but just
Yeah,
think of the different like a spray almost
yeah,
and how that just affect like it just lands on people. You can't help where it lands. But
yes,
it would also bring us to be mindful about the things that we say because we
yeah,
leave that impression with the people that pass us, talk to us,
yeah.
connect with us, and so those are things to think about.
That's it. And next time we'll talk also about also being over aware ruins your life. So that's why
Oh,
mindfulness matters. Because
yeah,
at the beginning, we need to be aware because we need to change stuff. But if you're consciously aware about yourself and other people, you lose the moment and you cannot enjoy
well, I cannot wait for our next session.
life.
Well,
So
everybody, thank you so much for joining us on Fran and Friends with my beautiful author, co-author, and founder uh, of the Working
my
Parent Institute and Intentional Reset. So we will see you guys next week, Sunday, same time, 7 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. And Dima, I don't know what time you're on because you're in Australia.
I'll be 12 p.m. Sydney time
All
on a
right.
Monday.
All right, guys. Have a good night or afternoon in Australia.
Yes.